Hi everyone, welcome to a very late book haul.
Something in my mind told me that you are the perfect one. I can't get you out. I will never leave aside my love. I don't want to look around, yeah. I will never let you down, yeah. Something in my mind told me that you are the perfect one, yeah.
So if you guys didn't know, my birthday was back in May, which now feels like it was a long time ago, and I did post a birthday vlog, so go check that out. But because it was my birthday, I got a lot of books for my birthday. Most of them I bought myself. My dad kind of just gave me money and was like, here you go, buy whatever you want, so of course I bought books. A couple of them were given to me, but most of them I bought myself. But I haven't hauled them because lately I've been in like the worst filming slump, reading slump, just everything slump. But I'm hoping to get back in the swing of things now, and I am just now doing this book haul. So sorry it's late, but here we go. So the first book I have is The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. This book I read recently on audiobook and I fell in love with it. It was this heartbreaking story of this girl who was raped by her brother's best friend in her freshman year of high school, and the book sort of takes you through all 4 years of her high school experience and how that sort of has impacted her throughout her high school career. And she never told anybody about what happened, so she's just holding this all up inside. My goodness, this book was amazing. I picked up the audiobook not knowing what it was about. I just was like, hey, that's a pretty cover. And so I just listened to the audiobook, and oh my goodness, I cried so hard, like you have no idea. It was such a good book, and I of course, like as soon as I finished it, I'm like, I have to buy it. I need it. So unfortunately, I'm a little sad to say that I think among the shipping process, someone accidentally cut through, like with like a knife cutter, yep, that's what I was going for, a box cutter, and it actually cut the cover a bit right here. I don't know how well you can see it, but I like taped the inside of it so it doesn't look too bad, but I was really bummed out when I saw that. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This was like the book I was most excited to get. Nevertheless, the book itself is intact, so I'm just so happy to have it. The next book I got was OCD Love Story by Corey Ann Haydu. I'm just such a big fan of books with mental health representation. The shelf's kind of empty because a lot of the books that I bought fit into that category. But normally, half of this shelf is just covered with books that have mental health representation, even if it's minimal. I just love seeing the way authors represent that in a book form. Like, it's something that a lot of people deal with, and it should be talked about in media, and I just love to see the way the authors take their own like creative liberties in trying to express their mental health. I don't exactly know anything else about it except that it has OCD representation, but I'm really excited to read it. So I'm not really doing this in any order. I'm kind of just grabbing from the stack of books that I know I got recently. So next books I have are a series, and this is called the Visions Trilogy. It's by Lisa McMann. We have Crash, Bang, and Gasp. I'm just going to be talking about Crash specifically because I don't want to like spoil what happens in the other two books. But so Crash is about a girl named Jules. One day she starts seeing visions of this building exploding, and at first she thinks she's going crazy. She has no idea what's happening, why she's seeing these things, and then she realizes that she knows who the owner and the owner's son who own that building because she goes to school with him. She realizes that she's seeing the future. She's seeing a future event happen. Like, obviously this thing has not happened yet, and so once she realizes that, she does anything in her power to stop that thing from happening. But these books are amazing. Lisa McMann is one of my favorite authors of all time. She wrote the Wake series. Lisa McMann is by far one of my favorite authors of all time. Her books are very fast-paced, easy reads. They're just ones that like suck you in, and they don't let you go until you're on the last page and you're like, oh my goodness, I read that whole book in one night, because that has happened to me before with her books. And her books are they're amazing, and I love them. And so when I picked up the first book in this series, I was like, I'm probably gonna like it. And I read it on audio, and I read it and I was like, yes, I'm in love. And so I needed to buy them. And plus, like, the spines are so pretty, like they're so shiny and beautiful. They are devastatingly amazing, and I highly recommend. Okay, next I have another trilogy, which is the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series, and it is a box set. and it's beautiful and I love it. I'm sure many of you know what this series is about. It's about this girl named Lara Jean who has this like hat box of these love notes that she's written to all the boys that she's loved in her past as a sort of like goodbye, farewell, moving on from that love. And one day her hat box is missing and all of the letters that she's written to these boys got mailed out to them. And of course that causes a lot of drama. As you guys probably know, this series is a major hit. They're making movies. People all over BookTube talk about them all the time. And I read them all in audiobook and I loved them as well. And so then I saw them on whichever website I was on and I was like, yes, please. And it was like $12 for this box set. And I was like, yes, score. So I was very excited to get this one in my possession. Next book I have is The Geography of Lost Things by Jessica Brody. This is a book that I have been eyeing for a while, but this book is sort of a romance type book about this girl named Allie who has to drive her now passed away father's convertible across the country, but it's a stick shift and she doesn't know how to drive stick shift, but her ex-boyfriend does. So they go on this crazy road trip car ride and there's obviously going to be lots of tension because they have dated and broken up in the past. This is by the author of The Chaos of Standing Still, which I read recently and I loved. And so I figured that I would probably like this one, plus the synopsis sounded very up my alley, and so I picked it up, and I'm very excited to get to it. Next I have Summerbird Blue by Kemi Dawn Bowman. I'm sorry if I butchered that. This is a sort of sad story about this girl whose mom and sister die in a car crash, and so she has to move to Hawaii, I believe, with her relative and sort of like begin her new life. I have actually started this book in the past. I picked it up and I think I read maybe like 30 pages or something. I put it down because I knew at that moment in my life that it was too sad and something I was not in the right headspace to be reading, and so I put it down. But I knew that I would probably like it. I mean, like, you heard about how I talked about the way I used to be. It was so sad and I loved it. And there are many sad books that I've read that I've just loved. So I knew I would probably like this one. I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. And I always was like, I'll read it someday, I'll read it someday. And then I saw it and I was like, yeah, this is the time. So I bought a copy. And actually this book I am planning on reading as part of my Reading Rush TBR, which I will link for you up above. I'll be reading it very soon and I'm very excited for it. Next we have Twisted by Lori Halse Anderson. Lori Halse Anderson is the author of one of my favorite books of all time, Winter Girls, which is right behind me. And this book I have read before. And this book is about a high schooler named Tyler who is kind of a troublemaker, and he had to work all summer as part of his punishment. And then he sees this girl who is the daughter of his father's boss, and he immediately has a crush on her, and things go from there. It's really hard to explain what this book is about specifically, and it's been a while since I've read it, so I don't really remember all the details, but like, I know it probably from that synopsis that I gave you, it sounds like, ooh, summery, lighthearted, la la, you know, fluffy type contemporary, but I will tell you there are parts in here that are not like that at all. So just know that if you're gonna read this book, that it's definitely not a lighthearted contemporary like most of the books on my shelves are. It's definitely one that's more impactful. It takes itself more seriously, if that makes sense. I wish I could give you a better synopsis, but it's just been so long that I can't really remember a whole lot, so I'm sorry. But I really hope to reread this soon because I love this book, and I do believe the first time I read it in like a couple days. Like, it didn't take me that long. Next, I have The Girls at 17 Swan Street by Yara Zageb. I'm so sorry, I probably butchered that. This is another eating disorder representation book that I saw on one of those websites, and I read the synopsis and I was like, eating disorders, hand it over, and so I bought it. And actually it's a lot taller than I thought it was going to be. Like, it's freaking like the same size as Ninth House. It's so big. All I really know about it, and again, when it comes to books that I haven't read, I don't really like knowing a whole lot, so I'm sorry that I give terrible synopses, but it's about a girl who is a professional dancer, and because of that, she ends up developing an eating disorder. And I am all down for eating disorders. I love books about them. They're my favorites. So I'm really excited to read this one and soak up all of its eating disorder representation. Next we have The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. This is a book that I read recently on audiobook as well. It's about this girl named Flora who has this sort of like amnesia-like condition where she can't remember things very well. She has to like write down notes like on her arm and like in her notebook. She has lots of notes just everywhere to remind her, oh, you need to take your pills, you need to eat lunch, you need to go to bed, you know, that kind of thing. But she does have this one memory, and that memory is of her kissing this boy. She can hold on to that. She's holding on to that memory. She can remember that one. It's not going away. And her parents actually leave her by herself because they have to go visit her brother who's in the hospital. And usually they never leave her by herself. She can't remember hardly anything. Like, it would be very dangerous for her to be alone. But they were like, oh, your friend will come over and make sure you're okay. It'll be fine. But then her friend doesn't come over because she's mad at her. Flora actually ends up convincing herself that this boy that she kissed, this boy is the reason why she can remember things. It's her key to remembering. And that he is going to college in Norway. So she decides to fly to Norway and go find him, get her memory back. And it's a very wild ride, and it's one of those books that's just really interesting because you don't really know exactly what's going on. She's sort of an unreliable narrator because she can't remember things very well. You just like hear things from her perspective like in that moment. So like sometimes it's hours later and she can't remember what she did before, and so you don't know what happened and she doesn't know what happened, and so you're kind of like, what's going on? It's very interesting in the way that it's written, and I very much enjoyed this one. And I feel like I've heard a lot of negative comments about this book, and I'm not sure where or who I heard them from, but I just like when I went into it, I was like, I just had this like feeling that I was like, people have said they didn't like this book. And I am not among those people. I loved this book. It was amazing. It really took a lot of interesting turns that I wasn't expecting, and it was just very good. Next book I have here is What I Lost by Alexandra Ballard. This is another book with eating disorder representation. This girl, she's inpatient for her eating disorder, and she gets these mysterious packages, so she doesn't know like who they're from, if they're from like a secret admirer or someone playing a prank on her, and she doesn't know quite for sure what's going on. Like I said, I have read this one, but I don't remember much about it, and I want to reread it very soon. And also, I just love having books with eating disorder representation on my shelves because, like I said, it's one of my favorite things to read about. So the next book I have here is The Duff by Cody Keplinger. This is a book that I'm sure many of you have like heard of the movie or seen the trailers for the movie. Basically, I haven't seen the movie yet because I wanted to read the book first, but basically what I know about it is it's sort of a teenage high school drama about this sort of idea that every group of friends has a duff, a designated ugly fat friend. And I do believe that the main character finds out that she's the duff of her group, and she wants to like go through this like transition and not be the duff anymore. And yeah, that's all I really know about it, but I heard somewhere that there is very slight eating disorder representation in this book, and so I was like, hand it over, and so I bought it. And I am actually hoping to read it soon, because this one has been really catching my eye lately. So the next book I have here is a copy of Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. Obviously, you guys know that I have a whole box set of Vampire Academy books, but this book in particular is annotated by my boyfriend, Will. I don't know if you can see the annotations very well. I don't want to look at them because I haven't read them yet and I don't want to see the annotations beforehand. But so if you guys don't know, Vampire Academy is a story about a society of vampires called Moroi and human vampire hybrids called Dompiers who live among humans in the world, but they sort of live in their own societies. And I know a lot of people probably have seen the movie and didn't like the movie. Personally, I saw the movie and I loved the movie, and that's why I read the books, but I can tell you that the books are so much more than what the movie even brings into it, especially the later books, because there's just so much world building in this universe, which I usually hate world building, but in this case, I really like it. I don't know why. But there's just so much going on in this universe, and so much to take in and to learn about, and so much lore behind it, and it's one of my favorite series of all time, which is why my boyfriend bought a copy of it and annotated it for me. So I'm really excited to read what he wrote about it and to see what his thoughts were. Okay, lastly, I have another trilogy here called The False Prince, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what they're about. My mom bought them at a garage sale. She was like, here you go, I got you some books, and like they're fantasy, and normally I'm not a huge fan of fantasy, but I was like, well, I'll give them a chance, you know, so I put them on my shelves. Like, I didn't get rid of them or anything, but I don't know what they're about, and like I said, I don't usually like reading synopses, so I apologize, but I can tell you that they are fantasy and probably about royalty. Yeah. There we go. So that is all the books that I'm going to haul today. There were a lot. I really should have done this haul sooner, so I'm sorry that it's going up so late, but that's just kind of the way it works sometimes. And I'm so excited to read all of the books that I got, even the ones I've read before. I just want to reread them. I'm very excited about every single book that I have bought. But thank you all so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please make sure you are subscribed down below. And if you want to follow me on social media, all my links are in the description box, as they always are. I recently got a TikTok, so make sure you go check out that link as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!